isang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang magiging sa silakanan, alam ng puso sa likit ko'y buhay. Upang ibigang kwenta ng pag-ibig sa handulubin, di ka pasisigil sa nagtatang tulong sa simple at sa langit ng pagkaw, ay hinapang tulakaw sa pagkayang ginamahal. Ang isang lang pagkawal ko'y matuntay na nagkikinig, ang ituloy na parang niya kailan ang kanyang matibigin. Lumagang araw kang warhagin magsigla, huwag nangit sa akin mo. Ang ligaya na may marami, ang mamagay ng dahil sa'yo. Simula ko hanggang ngayon, isa ang naging lalo. Magkaisa ang magulong, nalitingan ay marunong. Ngayon tayo mula sa unang tanda, nilang isang pangalit na umalang. Pinagako sa puso at paniniwala, ang ihaw para sa kabataan. Pagsang mo'y tagumpay, bunga na bawis mo at buhay. Kabayan, katarungan, ay ating ang nakamtan. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, pagpalain mo sa mundo. Ang sabon, lagi kang mamahalin. Walang pipigil sa damdamin, mga pangako'y tutupalin. Habang buhay kami sa'yo'y magbabantay, mananatili sa puso't isipan. Ang lahat ng butit ay nanabulis ng buhay, nasa pilingan ng may kapal. Ang sarap ay tagumpay, bunga bawis mo at buhay. Mapapolitika, mapatingin, mapakomentaryo at balita, ang programa ay patas sa lahat. Walang tinikilingan, walang kinakampihan, at walang pinapamigan ang programa ito. Ang programa ito ay public service sa kakaminan at trabaho lamang. Ang Administration Pinagbalita ay tumatalakay sa may subang kasalukuyan at nakapanahon. Mapapolitika, mapatingin, mapakomentaryo at balita, ang programa ay patas sa lahat. Walang tinikilingan, walang tinatampihan, at walang trabaho lamang.
Okay, silipin natin ang oras natin ngayon, no? Sa umagang ito, ang time check natin. Okay, 48 minutos po, pasado po alas 6. Mag-alas 7 na po sa umagang ito sa programa natin, no? Okay, lapitan natin ang kalendaryo. Anong kalendaryo natin ngayon, mga suki, no? Baka maubusan ng kuryente ito. Hindi pa. Okay, so ang kalendaryo natin, ano? Okay. 13 na po ng Nobyembre 2023. Okay, sa umagang ito sa programa natin, no? Okay, patuloy pa rin ang programa natin sa Consolidated News. Okay, dito po sa ADLSNTV News. Okay, sa programa Halo-Halo Special, Opinion, Balita at iba pa. Kasama po serbisyo publiko tinig ng mamamayan. Okay, sumbungan ng mamamayan. Okay, pinaparating natin, no? Okay, may mga galing sa abroad. Okay, itong si Cory Smith. Okay, may mga komentaryo po. Okay, sa ating okay, connection po sa mga linkage. Okay, sa mga iba-ibang bansa, mga suki, no? Okay, pero hindi na ako magpaligoy-ligoy dito sa programa natin. Okay, magandang umaga sa inyo. Anong may parinig natin dito, mga suki, no? Ayan. Okay, itong si hindi makuha-kuha po ang ceasefire po sa bakbakan yan, no? Okay, parang mga panandalian, humanitarian truce lang ang makukuha po ng UN Secretary General, no? Okay, at saka UN, okay, United Nations Security Council. Hindi makakuha po ng talagang lubusan ng ceasefire. Sa kasalukuyan po nasa Paris, okay, itong si UN Secretary General, no? Okay, pakinggan natin ito. Okay, problema po dyan, walang katapusan, mga suki, no? Okay, ilang buwan na, mahigit na isang buwan, no? Okay, so sa umpisa, kunin natin ang kanyang paliwanag, mga suki, no? Ito ay si UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, no? Ayan.
President Macron, thank you for opening this one. We are here to support civilians in Gaza. Of course, nothing justifies the abhorrent acts of terror by Hamas in Israel on 7 October, which are utterly condemned. Israelis and others were brutally killed on a dark day, and I call once again for the unconditional return of all hostages. Now, civilians in Gaza, including children and women, face a never-ending humanitarian nightmare. Their neighborhoods wiped out, their loved ones killed, bombs raining down while being denied life's very basics: food, water, medicine, electricity. Some life-saving aid is beginning to trickle into Gaza, but let's face it, it's a drop in the ocean. The needs are enormous. We must step up to assist and protect civilians in Gaza. That means an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. It means ensuring full respect of international humanitarian law. It means protecting hospitals, UN facilities, shelters, and schools. It means unfettered, safe, and sustained access to bring and distribute supplies at much greater scale, volume, and frequency, including fuel. And it means investing in the $1.2 billion humanitarian appeal that the United Nations has just launched to help the people of Gaza. I urge your support. Now is the time for concrete action. Together, we can help ease this terrible human suffering. We can hope civilians in Gaza see at last, and at the very least, a glimmer of hope, a sign of solidarity, and a signal that the world sees their plight and cares enough to act. Thank you.
Six most powerful countries in history.
Okay, yan po ang latest mo ng latest mo sa problema po dyan sa bakbakan na yan. No? Wala pang okay, kalutasan po mga suki, mga kababayan. No? Okay, subukan natin ang ating idol, former President Barack Obama, kung ano naman ang okay, nasa puso niya. Okay, tungkol po dyan sa problema po sa okay, Barack Obama 2023 full interview exclusive Barack Obama talks Gaza Israel. Pakinggan natin ito sa kanya naman, no? Okay.
What up? What up? I was wearing a jacket, and then there was, this whole faux casual thing. And,
It's not though. I've been this way my whole.
but then Alyssa did remind me, that the whole shirt sleeve, roll up the sleeves thing. That is
Your vibe.
kind of the brand. That's the vibe. Yeah, for this crew. So good to see everybody. You too.
Hello.
Good to see everybody.
Okay, so first question's for me.
Okay.
Okay. So 15 years ago, a lot of people in this room were in Grant Park on arguably the nicest night that Chicago ever could have given us, weather-wise.
Unbelievable.
And I know that all of us have talked over the years about, well, do you remember this and do you remember that? And like our memories have iterated. And so I just wanted to ask you, can you tell us what you think about that night when you look back on it?
I'll be honest with you, and some of you have heard me say this. I felt pretty sober that night. Because I was fairly optimistic at that point that we were going to win. And I had said to everybody on the campaign trail, to staff, that the point of winning was not the celebration, standing up. The point of winning was then to do the work. And I have to say that by the time the official announcement was made, I was already spending a lot of time thinking about the work. And so there was a satisfaction. The thing probably that I remember the most was sitting in the hotel waiting for the final call. And Pete Souza took a picture of this. Some of you may have seen it. Michelle was off with the girls doing something in another corner of the room. And I'm sitting there with Michelle's mom. And we're just watching the television. And she's just quiet, and she's just sitting there. And I remember thinking to myself, what does this mean for her? She was born and raised in Inglewood on the south side, had moved then to South Shore, married, raised a family. During her childhood, even her going or being taken to Marshall Fields or one of the department stores.
Mahaba-haba ito, mahigit isang oras yung balitaktakan dito.
She would have been welcomed. She had family, people, smart, skilled tradesmen, some educators who could never aspire to do more than work in a factory or work as a clerk. And so she's sitting there and she's witnessing that her daughter's about to be the first lady of the United States. And I remember her she's very quiet, and then she just, and she's not a demonstrative person, and she just reached out and held my hand. And I think that's something that stayed with me.
I was thinking about how much the world has changed over the last 15 years. And obviously, you dealt with your fair share of crises in the White House. We all remember that. But we were never living in fear that if we lost the next election, that we might lose our democracy. And obviously, that is a fear that is very much with us right now. And I know you've talked a lot about what it will take to protect democracy, and that involves policies that improve people's lives and structural reforms and strengthening institutions and winning elections. But you and I have talked a lot over the years about the power of a really good story. And I wonder if you were running for president today in this political environment, in this media environment, what story would you tell about why democracy is a better choice than what the demagogues and authoritarians are selling?
So I think the starting point is to talk about the things that are uppermost on people's mind, to give you a permission structure to get to democracy, right? One of the things we learned about 2016 is if you are simply running against and fear, and you don't have a positive story to tell about the concrete challenges that people face, folks may not get to that higher level story about the meaning of the country and so forth. So I remember during the midterms when I was a surrogate helping folks out, one of the things I really insisted on is, well, we need to talk about inflation, and we need to talk about crime, and we need to talk about immigration. We need to talk about the things that are uppermost in people's minds or being fed to people, and speak about those squarely, and that's the gateway to then get to where we want to be. So that's point number one. Look, if you think back to what we did in 08, 12, ideally when we were on our game during the course of the presidency, the story really didn't change about America. And the story was, you have a bunch of people show up on these shores, many of them outcasts, many of them escaping tyranny, escaping crushing poverty, escaping discrimination, escaping caste, and trying to make of their lives what they could, and even more importantly, trying to make sure that their kids had something different. And it was always from the very beginning, uh, an experiment in overcoming the gap between ideals and reality. And democracy was never exactly as promised. And then we had a bunch of people who worked together to realize that promise. And I think the argument we can tap into right now is reminding people of the fact that we've been through stuff like this before. We've been through eras in which, not that long ago, in which Black people were second-class citizens, in which gay people were in the closet out of necessity, because otherwise they might not be able to be employed, or worse. We've been in situations in which women were subordinate. And the good news is that because we had this system of being able to persuade each other about the better angels of our nature in fits and starts, we got better. We got kinder, we got more tolerant, and it's never been perfect, and it's never been, it's always been messy. But there was a pathway for us to express our best selves, and that was true not just for Democrats; it was true for Republicans too. And so I think that's the starting point for them to be able to say, and some of you have heard me say this, it's not as if the entire history of this country, Democrats were on the right side of this thing. Democrats, for most of modern history, up until the civil rights legislation, they were anti-democratic and terrorized people and killed them for trying to exercise their democracy. So we don't have clean hands. And I think acknowledging that is, again, an entryway. What I'm always trying to look for is a way to get to the point where somebody who otherwise wouldn't listen and is fearful and is angry and suspicious can stop because they feel as if I saw them for a second and I understood their lives. And in that moment, maybe then I can persuade them that this precious thing we have, which is our ability to sort things out and exercise forbearance towards each other and understanding and just getting along and listening, if I can get to that moment, then I think we'll be okay. And that's really the instinct that people have. Look, let's face it, we did well in this last midterm, not because all the trend lines were in our favor. It was because the majority of people believe in that story and they recognize it in their own lives. And so speaking to them on those terms is what's vital, which is why I think the last time we were together, I said that kind of forbearance, we have to exercise, we have to model and exercise as well. And a losing strategy for us, I think, is when we are so insistent on our purity and we're so self-righteous about our positions that we can't see those folks, or we're talking down to them, or our general attitude is, that we're going to convince you about how wrong you are. I have not seen that work yet. Now, look, last point I'll make, and I think about this a lot because I've been writing about it. There are times, there are moments, there is room for a prophetic voice, just radical truth telling. And not only is that sometimes satisfying, but our own base sometimes needs to hear that, right? But you have to pick and choose your spots, and you always have to, even when you're in that mode, you've got to give people an opening. You have to give them an invitation to. There's got to be room for them in that truth that you're speaking. You know, I'm telling you something maybe that you don't want to hear, but you know what? I'll bet you can understand it and be a part of us addressing that truth. So, all right.
Speaking of those kinds of conversations, last week you wrote this thoughtful, nuanced statement on the situation in Israel and Gaza. Unfortunately, the debate online, especially on social media, is not that. It's can be very strident and dug in, and a lot of people fighting and talking past each other. I imagine there's a lot of people in this room or people listening at home who see what's happening, care deeply, want to be educated, want to participate in the conversation, but they're scared of saying the wrong thing, hurting someone's feelings unnecessarily, or just kind of not knowing enough to participate, and therefore they kind of tap out. What's your advice to people who want to participate in these debates that can feel so fraught about what the path forward is?
Look, I always say I probably wouldn't have been elected even to the Senate, and certainly not the presidency, had there not been this weird convergence with the internet and early social media. I was an outsider. I didn't have the backing of institutions and organizations, and there was so much power in seeing all these young voices being able to gather together, and from every walk of life. But I'm dating myself now. It was mostly MySpace and Meetup. And I always, because I've been working a lot on social media issues and misinformation and now AI, I always point out, the thing about Meetup was you had to meet up. Right? Because it's a pretty crude Flintstone tool, right? You send, it's like, hey, we're going to be in the church basement in Des Moines on Saturday, meet up. That was pretty much the extent of the technology.
Yeah, a cork board.
And but the reason I tell that story is that the power of meeting up is something that all of you will remember whenever we'd walk into a campaign office. Whatever your idea of what an Obama supporter was, when you got into the campaign office, just as was true if you went to a meetup meeting, is you've got a young black woman with a nose ring, and you've got some middle-aged white guy in a flannel shirt and a buzz cut who's a Army veteran, and you've got a Hispanic gay engineer, and the reason that was powerful was because you imagine at the first meetup meeting, okay, I've got an assumption about what an Obama supporter is. But then when I sit there, it turns out that that person's not actually completely like me. And if they're talking, that means that they've got some quirky ideas. And I promise you, you all know, we had some quirky volunteers. And had some who had some unexpected views that did not correspond to the litmus test of progressivism, right? The reason I'm telling that story is because what that allowed was for all of us to see each other in their complexity and then still decide, all right, let's work together. And then they had to all go out and knock on doors and meet people who were even more quirky, right? So going back to obviously a serious question, there's no way to avoid in this particular moment on this particular issue after so much blood has been spilled against the backdrop of this history. It doesn't matter whether it's online or in person, there is going to be rage and anger and not just generational traumas, right? I mean, this is century-old stuff that's coming to the fore, and you've witnessed the kind of worst cruelty and tragedy that can befall people involving children and spouses and grandparents, and passions are going to be high. But what I will say is that if there's any chance of us being able to act constructively to do something, it will require an admission of complexity and maintaining what on the surface may seem contradictory ideas. That what Hamas did was horrific, and there's no justification for it. And what is also true is that the occupation and what's happening to Palestinians is unbearable. And what is also true is that there is a history of the Jewish people that may be dismissed unless your grandparents or your great-grandparents or your uncle or your aunt tell you stories about the madness of anti-Semitism. And what is true is that there are people right now who are dying who have nothing to do with what Hamas did. And what is true, right? I mean, we can go on for a while. And the problem with the social media and trying to TikTok activism and trying to debate this on that is you can't speak the truth. You can pretend to speak the truth. You can speak one side of the truth. And in some cases, you can try to maintain your moral innocence by virtue of just grabbing that slice of the truth. But that won't solve the problem. And so if you want to solve the problem, then you have to take in the whole truth. And you then have to admit nobody's hands are clean, that all of us have are complicit to some degree. I look at this and I think back, what could I have done during my presidency to move this forward as hard as I tried? I've got the scars to prove it. But there's a part of me that's still saying, well, was there something else I could have done? That's the conversation we should be having. Not just looking backwards, but looking forward. And that can't happen if we are confining ourselves to our outrage. And even what I just said, which sounds very persuasive, still doesn't answer the fact of, all right, how do we prevent kids from being killed today? So, which is why in conversations that I've had with some of the young activists, I come with some humility and I say, look, I get why you might not want to look at history and context, and that's your primary concern. But the problem is that if you are dug in on that, well, the other side is dug in remembering the videos that Hamas took of what they did on 7th, and they're dug in too. And which means we will not stop those kids from dying. So my advice to young people who want to get involved, I guess it's not possible anymore to download Meetup.
Whatever it is.
But approximate that. I would rather see you out there talking to people, including people who you disagree with. If you genuinely want to change this, then you've got to figure out how to speak to somebody on the other side and listen to them and understand what they are talking about and not dismiss it. Because you can't save that child without their help. Not in this situation. So, all right. We went over time, didn't we? That zero's been on, look. Come on, you guys know me. Don't bait me with a question like that and then think
Right.
I'm gonna. This is why I could never win these debates.
That's actually Dan's last question.
That's right.
I mean,
That's
all right.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
you sat down with us on your last full day in the White House, which is, I'm sure, how you planned to celebrate the end of your presidency.
I did.
You did. And in that interview, you talked about how you saw your legacy. And you said that you wanted your legacy to be not necessarily the policies you passed, but what the people who got involved in politics through your campaign, through your administration, were still doing years later to affect change. So here we are on the 15th anniversary of your election. Thousands of alumni are here. And I just wanted to close out here to get your reaction to what you see from what the people in this room are doing and how it makes you feel.
I mean, I am beaming with pride. I'm listening to Jesse and Lauren. I've had a chance. Yesterday, obviously, I stopped by your drunken rock and roll.
Okay, isingit ko lang ito, no? Isingit ko lang ito, kalalabas lang. Ayan, itong South Africa, Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor says she expects the International Criminal Court, ICC, to issue an arrest warrant for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, no? So, ulitin ko. Okay, South Africa, Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor say she expects the International Criminal Court, ICC, to issue an arrest warrant for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, no? So ito po ang latest po mga global news po, mga kaibigan, no? Okay. So galing po sa isang opisyal po ng South Africa, no? Ayan. Kaya ang question natin, kaya. Ayan. So ituloy po natin ang former president itong sa talk show ito. Okay, crook ang titulo po ng nila, no? Platform nila. Crook. Okay, crook. Alam mo ng crook. C-O-R-O-O-K. So, continue natin po si Barack Obama, no? Ayan.
I had a chance just now to speak to some of our senior team. And some of you have already heard this, but I'm going to repeat it because it bears repeating. I actually generally am not nostalgic. As I'm writing about the presidency, as I think about the presidency, as I look at current issues, I tend to remember the mistakes I made and the doubts and questions I have and the things I didn't get done and I don't look at things through rose-colored glasses. I remember how hard every step of the way was. But as I just mentioned, the team, the people, the family, the culture that we constructed, that feels as true as anything in my life. And it was reflected on the campaign, and it was reflected in the White House. It was, as Michelle said, reflected in people in high-profile positions in the West Wing and East Wing. It was reflected in people who were working out of the limelight in agencies and embassies. It was reflected by a bunch of kids dropped off in the middle of farms and communities that they had never imagined themselves being in. And yet somehow a bunch of 25 and some younger would persuade these communities that we had a chance to be better and listen to each other and treat each other with respect. And the fact that somehow that sustained itself across this many people, and this is just a fraction of the people who were involved, and that now is carried forward, whether it's somebody like Lauren in Congress or Deb Haaland, suddenly goes to, or it's somebody like Jesse or some of the folks you saw in the video who are, in their own communities, transforming the culture of those communities and modeling that kindness and hard work and responsibility and consideration and openness to other people. That gets me choked up. That makes me proud. And that is something that I think part of what sometimes all of us who were part of this struggle with is we know that's out there in the country, right? We can feel it, and we know that when people have a chance to feel that in themselves and in their communities and in their neighborhoods, they feel better than they do when they're angry and hateful and closed off and lonely. And and feeling victimized. We know that. And so there's a part of us, I think sometimes we just are so often what we're trying to figure out is how can we remind people of that? Not any particular campaign, but the fact that honest human response is available to us and will ultimately save us. That's why I'm so proud of all of you. That's the thing that doesn't get old and stays with me and keeps me going.
President Obama, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for bringing us all together, and thank you for giving every single person in this room and countless others the chance to go on this journey with you.
All right. Appreciate you guys. Love you.
Today's presenting sponsor is Simply Safe Home Security. Have you gone to any football games this month? Yeah, okay. Not this month. Well, it's November 1st. When you're out at the game, it's a great feeling to know Simply Safe is handling defense back home. Oh, it's good. It's just getting worse. It's good. Right now, you can get up to 50% off any new Simply Safe system. It was named the best home security of 2023 by U.S. News and World Report. Love it. Take it away.
You know, a lot of these other security companies, they really hike the prices. They're not Simply Safe.
You know, a linebacker at your house for safety.
That's right.
Well,
And
not so free
it's nice
safety.
having Simply Safe watching this tight end. You know?
That's what I'm talking
I set up a Simply Safe
about.
system all by myself. Worked great, incredibly easy to do. Once you do, you'll be really happy with it. It's incredibly reliable, incredibly convenient. The app is great, and it gives you peace of mind.
Slot receiver.
Hey, plus I like football.
What? For a limited time, Pod Save America listeners get a special 50% off any Simply Safe system with a Fast Protect plan. Visit simplysafe.com/crooked. That's simplysafe.com/crooked. There's no safe like Simply Safe. This episode of Pod Save America is brought to you by Cariuma, the cool sustainable sneaker brand worn and loved by skaters and surfers and us. They're reimagining classic sneakers with you and the planet in mind. Guys, you know what season it is? Cozy time. It's cozy season. With over 40,000 five-star reviews, Cariuma's got you covered with elevated everyday styles and ultimate comfort. From crisp early autumn mornings to the first snowfall of the year, these sneakers will keep you feeling warm and looking your best. Those seasons really sound cool. Wonder what it's like to live in seasons. It must be nice. Grass is always greener, I guess. Cariuma is always keeping it fresh, collaborating with brands like Pantone, Akusai, and Peanuts for unforgettable limited edition launches. A collection of colors is released in collaboration with Pantone every season, and the new fall shade releases are sure to become your...
Okay, sandali lang. Akin naman, no? Okay. Akin naman. Naku, walang sound. Okay. Okay, saan po napunta ang sound? Okay, dito tayo. May sound dito. Okay, okay, pagpatuloy natin ito. Ano ba itong programa nito?
Go to sneakers for the cooler days to come. Love Cariumas. Got some white ones at home. Got some gray ones.
The two colors John likes
It's my
most.
two primary colors. Yeah, what about you guys? I got everything.
I got a gray pair of the Love Relieve It rose-colored ones,
Mhm.
and the Love Relieve It black-colored ones.
Yeah, right. Yeah, ones with pungent on them.
Yeah.
Cariuma is B Corp certified and has a dedicated reforestation program based in the Brazilian rainforest. Who are the co-founders? Quick, without looking.
Oh,
David and Fernando.
Yeah, Tommy
nice.
Woons.
Hey, B Corp. We got the A team here.
Hey.
Yeah, this is the A Corp.
Look around.
Anyway, it's important for them to plant trees, and it should be important for you to plant them too, because they grew up in Brazil. They've already planted over 2 million trees to date. Not just David and Fernando. That would be a lot of work. Just Cariuma in general. And all of you who've purchased Cariuma shoes. Now, for a limited time, Pod Save America listeners can get an exclusive 15% off your pair of Cariuma sneakers. Go to cariuma.com/cricket to get 15% off. That's cariuma.com/cricket for 15% off, only for a limited time. Pod Save America is brought to you by Brooklinen. One time I got a sweater that was for my aunt. You know what? You should have given me Brooklinen.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the secret to being everyone's favorite this season. You can unwrap the secret to better sleep with the gift of Brooklinen, home of the internet's favorite sheets and your favorite sheets. Brooklinen's curated holiday gift guide has a range of high-quality products suited for the whole family, whether it's a hug and blanket form or a whole spa day wrapped around your body. Oof, those super plush.
Hintayin lang natin matapos yan, no?
Oof, I don't know. Weird. Brooklinen has got options to make this your easiest gifting season ever. We don't eat the coffee. We love Brooklinen.
I love, actually need to get another pair of the Brooklyn sweatpants because I wore them so many times that eventually I had to get rid of them.
Yeah,
They're that comfortable.
Just wear a hole in the seat.
Yes, I literally did.
I've been there. And the blankets are great. The sheets are obviously wonderful. Everything's great. So check out Brooklinen's holiday assortment in store or online at brooklinen.com. That's BROOKLINEN.com and use code CRICKET for $20 off your order of $100 or more. That's BROOKLINEN.com. Use promo code CRICKET for $20 off. It's election day, where Ohio will vote on a ballot measure that would protect abortion access. Virginia will decide whether to give Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin the Republican legislature he needs to ban abortion. Kentucky will decide what polls are now showing is a very close race between Democratic Governor Andy Beshear and Republican anti-abortion extremist Daniel Cameron. And Mississippi decides whether to elect a Democratic governor for the first time in 20 years. If you live in these states or other places with elections on Tuesday, go vote.
Pennsylvania, Supreme Court.
Thank you, Tommy.
Big election
There's
there.
some New York City elections as well, local elections there. There's elections, people. If you need more info, if you want to know whether there's an election near you or how you can help, head to votesaveamerica.com as always, and we'll be breaking down all the results later this week. All right, let's get to the rest of the news. We are a year out from Election Day 2024, and the New York Times is kicking off the party with a new poll of more than 3,600 registered voters, big sample, across the 6 most competitive battleground states that show Donald Trump leading Joe Biden by an average of 48 to 44%. So they did 600 voters per state. Trump is up 52-41 in Nevada, 49-43 in Georgia, 49-44 in Arizona, 48-43 in Michigan, and 48-44 in Pennsylvania, with Joe Biden leading only in Wisconsin by 47 to 45%. The results don't seem to reflect either Trump's strengths or the Democratic Party's weaknesses. Trump is slightly more unpopular with voters in this poll than he was in 2020, and voters would choose in this poll an unnamed generic Democrat over Trump by 8 points. And at least in this poll, even Vice President Kamala Harris performs 2 points better than Biden against Trump. What is mostly bothering voters, at least in this poll, is what we've seen in nearly every single poll for the last several years: Biden's age, his handling of the economy, and his ability to do the job. I'll stop there so you two can get in on the fun. And maybe we can start with your takes on the reaction from the Biden folks and some Democratic strategists, which I'd summarize as: it's one poll. Obama was in a similar spot back in 2011. The election is a full year away. The campaign hasn't started yet. The economy is improving. And Trump might be a convicted felon by the time people start voting. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, the point that we're a year out from the election is absolutely right. Lots of time. Events will change. There's time to campaign. The campaigning hasn't really even started. There'll be lots of paid media, billions of dollars of paid media to try to sell Joe Biden's message to America. That's all right. The response that grinds my gears a little bit is the everyone stop bedwetting. It's like, we can't tell people that, the future of American democracy itself is at stake, but also like chillax. I think everyone's allowed to feel a little anxiety. And so I think what you do with that anxiety is up to you, and those of us who want to channel it into action by volunteering and donating and getting involved, I think that's the path forward here. But in terms of what we learned from this poll, I mean, it's clear that Joe Biden personally has real challenges at the moment with younger voters, especially voters under 30. He went from being up considerably in the last election to basically tired. He has real challenges with voters of color, both African American and Latino voters, and there's real questions about his age. And the challenge going forward is whether Biden can convince these voters of color and young voters that he's actually working for them, that his policies are improving their lives, because a lot of people are saying in these polls they're not feeling that improvement. And then separately, I think there's this age question of whether he can convince voters who have been convinced by, I don't know, maybe it's misleadingly edited social media videos on TikTok or whatever, that he's not fit for the job, that in fact he is. But, a lot of different tracks here for problems he needs to solve.
Yeah, I mean, I also, by the way, like, you don't need to see misleadingly edited footage of Joe Biden to worry about Joe Biden's age. Joe Biden's age is his biggest liability. He is very old. It makes a lot of people, including us, nervous. And I think, like, you look back and say, oh, Barack Obama went through a news cycle like this. You can look at previous incumbents, George W. Bush, and say, like, these are all people that saw polls at around this time that showed them down, and they were managed to claw their way back.
Okay, American worried for Joe Biden because of his age, no? Okay, matanda na kasi. Okay, natatakot din sila. Kahit mga Amerikano, okay, katulad ng sinabi ng mga ito, okay, takot sila po na kay President Joe Biden, no? Para kayo kung may mga shake-up yan, okay, pagdating sa halalan po 2024 sa Amerika, no? Okay, ipatuloy lang natin itong mga observation nila, no? Okay. Exclusive Barack Obama talks Gaza Israel, no? Yeah.
The uncertainty in all this, which I think is a reason for a lot of grave concern, is the effort you can make in the ways that you would in any race to close some of these gaps around making sure people understand your accomplishments, making sure people understand the threat that Trump poses. I mean, one number that I think is really bad in this poll, but is actually in a strange way like a glimmer of hope, is it says only 46% of voters say Mr. Biden has the proper temperament to be president, barely higher than the 43% who said the same of Mr. Trump. Like, you can look at that and say, hold on a second, look how badly Biden has lost his edge. But then you say, reintroduce people to the Donald Trump they know and hate, and all of a sudden you'll see those numbers come down. But what we don't know is, okay, you've done that. You've made a case for Joe Biden and his accomplishments, his legacy as president. You've made a case against Donald Trump. Does the age factor continue to matter in a way that you can't control for it, in a way that you can't change? Is it an unwinnable assignment to overcome the age question? That is, I think, the fear.
I want to separate our analysis from our advocacy here. Like, obviously, we want to do everything humanly possible to make sure Donald Trump doesn't become president again, and that includes doing everything humanly possible to reelect Joe Biden if he's the nominee. But as always, we want to give you like the most honest analysis, and that means no sugarcoating, and it also means no like unnecessary doomerism either.
Yeah.
Neither. So with that said, like, here's where I think the Biden folks have a point. It is just one poll. Even excellent polls, which I think the New York Times Siena poll is, can only tell you about how voters are feeling at that given moment. And this happens to be a moment where the U.S. and the world are in turmoil. And Barack Obama did have approval ratings that were almost as bad as Biden's 1 year out from the 2012 election. But here's where I disagree with some of the rosier analysis. The polling averages all show Trump slightly ahead right now, not just this poll. And you can, look, a lot of people were like, the Susquehanna poll last week had Biden up 7. Yeah, it did. But when you average all the polls, Trump is slightly ahead. Unlike Barack Obama, Joe Biden's approval rating has been stuck in the low 40s for 2 years now. 2 years. That was not the case with Barack Obama. It went up and down, up and down. For Joe Biden, it was in the low 40s when other Democrats not named Joe Biden overperformed in the midterms where the New York Times poll basically nailed the results of the most competitive Senate races, and where most of the polls that weren't done by partisan Republican firms were also pretty accurate. Polls did not predict a red wave in 2022. The political coverage suggested a red wave. The nonpartisan polls were actually really good. And when Nate Silver wrote his trollish "Is Obama Toast" piece in the New York Times that everyone's citing from 2011, this is what the polls in the months of November and December said about an Obama-Romney race when Nate had that headline. Obama +6, Obama +6, Obama +4, Obama +1. There were 13 polls in those months. Only 2 had Romney ahead. The rest all had Barack Obama ahead. So, and like the other challenge, the age challenge, obviously, inflation has come down, prices have not. And so the problem is, like, you know, you're pissed about a $15 cheeseburger. The $15 cheeseburger is no longer, the price isn't going up anymore, but it's stuck at $15.
It's not going to be 12. Yeah,
That's going to be 12.
That's the issue.
And that is a source of real frustration for people.
Yeah, I think people say, oh, it's just one poll. Yes, it is a snapshot, and polls catch people at a moment in time. What I find, to your point, this poll is a reflection of a lot of other polls. This poll is not an outlier to what we're
100%.
seeing. It is,
Oh, yeah.
it is
That's what I'm saying.
I'm saying. So it's like, yes, you can view this as a snapshot in time, but you can't say, oh, don't worry about one poll. Because this poll is capturing a mood, is capturing a feeling, it is capturing a result that we've seen across the board.
Yeah, in the interest of not sugarcoating it, I mean, the sort of biggest things that worried me are on the economy, a majority of voters say Biden's policies have personally hurt them, but they think Trump's policies helped them. So that means that 59% said they trusted Trump over Biden on the economy. It was 59% to 37%. That's a pretty large deficit on the economy. And then when it comes to the age question, 71% of voters think Biden is too old to be an effective president. 3 years ago, only 30% of voters said he was too old to be president. Now, the Biden folks will push back and say in that same poll, 39% of voters say Trump is too old. And that's right, and that's fair. But I think that speaks to probably a large subset of people in the country who feel like they're both too old and are looking for some sort of alternative, which might mean they lead to the Green Party, but RFK Jr., et cetera. And so I think when it comes to the age question, it's not guaranteed that you can change.
Okay, sigit ko lang ito. May negosyante binaril daw. Okay, babaeng negosyante binaril patay. Basahin po natin ang detalye ng balita ito, no? Singit ko lang ito. Ayan. Ayan. Okay, patay on the spot sa tama ng bala. Okay, itong si Irene Banyo Manzano, isang negosyante number patay nitong gabi ng Biyernes pa pala, no? Okay, Nobyembre 10, 2023. Okay, na naganap ang insidente okay, sa gilid ng Lapu-Lapu Street, sa Barangay Poblacion, sa harap mismo ng Nuestra Señora de la Candelaria, Paris, sa Tacorong City, mga kababayan, no? Tacorong City, meaning sa Sultan Kudarat, no? Okay, nagsasagawa pa ng investigation ng mga kasapi ng Tacorong City Police Station, okay, sa pagkakapatay kay Manzano, okay, Nobyembre 11, 2023 ang balita ito, no? Ayan. So dito po sa picture. Okay, hindi na po nakagalaw sa kanyang sasakyan itong magandang babae po, may mga kalahati natang edad dito, no? Babaeng negosyante, pinatay po sa loob ng kanyang sasakyan, no? Ayan. So, ganun po. Okay. Ayan. Okay, pagpatuloy po sa problema sa Amerika, okay, ng itong Biden administration, no? Ayan. Sa mga pag-aanalisa ng mga political pundit diyan sa Amerika, no? Ayan.
Change people's mind about whether someone is too old to do a job, right? Yeah. That might be a view that gets hardened. The other last thing that worries me is half of the respondents think that Joe Biden profited from Hunter Biden's business dealings. Now, all available evidence suggests that that is not true at all. There's no evidence to back that up. But it again speaks to how powerful the right-wing disinformation ecosystem has been, and how much, efforts on the Hill to just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks have actually been effective.
I want to zero in on the voters that Biden is losing here, as Tommy pointed out. Young voters, especially young non-white voters, and also non-white voters in general. And I think when you hear that, maybe when a lot of people listening in our audience hear that, they think, oh, maybe those voters think that Joe Biden is not progressive enough. That is not the case. The voters, the young voters and the voters of color who have left Joe Biden in this poll are more disengaged from politics. They are more moderate. They do not necessarily think that Joe Biden isn't progressive enough. They also don't think he's too liberal. Most of them say that ideologically he's just fine. They are upset about the age, and they're upset about the economy. And they are abortion, democracy, a lot of the social issues are not their top issue. Their top issue is the economy.
Yeah.
That is the number one issue for a lot of these young voters. They are extremely disaffected, and they did, in general, they did not show up in the midterms. And in fact, so you must be thinking to yourself, like, okay, what about all the young voters I know that are very progressive and voters of color who are progressive? They showed up in the midterms and they voted for Democrats, and they've supported Joe Biden in the past. So those voters are with us. The voters who did not show up, if you just correct Joe Biden's problems with the voters who didn't show up in the midterms, he would be ahead right now.
Yeah, and if you just take the young voters who were open to Kamala but not to Biden, you erase a lot of the gap. And by the way, it's not like Kamala Harris is beating Donald Trump. A generic Democrat is beating Donald Trump. Kamala Harris is doing better than Joe Biden is doing, but she still carries some of the effects of incumbency. 59% of voters under 30 rate the economy as poor. 0 respondents under 30 in Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin said the economy was excellent. The other thing about this too is the message that's driving the midterms right now, trying to turn people out against right-wing extremism and turn people out in favor of abortion, which helped a great deal in the midterms. These voters that we need to bring back aren't the kind of voters who turned out in the midterms. Now the question is, are they people that are receptive to an argument around abortion and democracy, but it hasn't reached them yet?
40% of voters who picked Trump in this poll said that abortion should always or mostly be legal, and they picked Trump anyway.
And so what is it that we need to do to reach those voters with a message around abortion? Or is it that questions around this, we talked about this before, like, we have this belief that this argument for democracy is really effective. It is for a certain segment of voters, particularly engaged people. And also, by the way, for a lot of like moderate, older voters that are the kind of people that have come to Joe Biden. But for younger, disaffected voters, we're making an argument for democracy, and a democracy they don't feel is working for them. So what is it you need to do to make that case around abortion, around democracy, and around basic economic issues to bring those people in a way that we're currently not doing? Because clearly there is something really missing here.
You have a real Nevada problem.
Well,
17% of Nevada Democrats said they'll vote for Trump.
Also the most diverse state.
Yeah.
And it's very odd how for the first time in a long time, racial polarization has gone the other way in this poll. So someone was like, people are, rightly questioning, like, well, then why is Biden leading by 2 in Wisconsin? Wisconsin was a tight state. Wisconsin's the whitest and one of the older states. And he's doing the next 2 best states for him are Michigan and Pennsylvania. And those are also pretty white states, but except for the areas around Philadelphia and Detroit, where he's not doing that well.
And there's subsequent survey data that was done after this New York Times poll that suggests that Biden has some real problems with Arab American, Muslim American young voters in Michigan that I think is just something to keep in the back of your head.
The other interesting thing is when Biden is doing better in this poll with likely voters than registered voters. And if you just go by likely voters, he actually catches up to Trump in Michigan, and then he does better in some other ones. And that's part of this is, and Nate Cohn goes into this in the polling analysis, which is like some of these younger voters, when you asked them the first time, do you pick Biden or Trump? They said neither. And then it was only when you push them, they said, all right, maybe Trump, but they don't really love Trump either. They're not like sold on Trump. And the question is, did these voters just stay home in 2024? And so we also could be headed for a very bizarre situation where a lower turnout election helps Joe Biden, which is again, one of the reasons why Democrats did so well in the midterms, because the type of voters who show up in the midterms, college educated, in cities, suburbs, like those are now more Democratic voters.
There's also, I mean, look, young people are not suddenly discovering that they're open to Donald Trump. This poll, to me, is a little bit of a bizarre version of what we started to see in 2016 and you know, didn't really accept as what was happening, which is this idea of Trump as just like this like giant middle finger you can pull like a lever. Like, are you for Joe Biden? Or are you for Donald Trump? I'm for neither. Well, you have to pick. Fine, then fuck you. I'll vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah, so there could be that, or it could be serious, or we don't know.
We don't know. I mean, the one thing I would say, look, I think we've done our penance to the pessimism gods. I think we've paid our respects. The fire is burning. I know. I
just real analysis.
I know. I'm agreeing. I'm glad we're having this conversation. There was one piece of this is I think that like there was a little note of hope. Little, you know.
Oh, I have a couple. Yeah, I have a couple. I'm into the good side.
Okay. Well, just the one that I thought was interesting is that if Trump is convicted of a crime, 6% of voters across Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin said they would switch their votes to Biden. Which would change this entire poll.
It's not
barely. I mean, get to 49% Biden.
40. No.
Okay, singit ko ang balita, mga suki mga kababayan. Balitang national, no? Tapusin ko yung mamaya yun. The Department of Finance, DOF, welcome and I fully support the revised implementing rules and regulation, IRR, okay, of the Maharlika Investment Fund, MIF, Act. Okay, the enhancements introduced by the IRR are all within the bounds of the law, meant to give full meaning, okay, to the establishment of a strong corporate governance structure. Okay, in particular, the IRRs emphasize on ensuring independence of the Board of Directors of the Maharlika Investment Corporation, MIC, allow each more headroom to form a credible oversight and the risk management bodies while affording the highest standard of effective fund management. Okay, its finalization comes at an opportune time as investors, both local and international, have signified in several investor promotion engagement the robust interest in the country's first ever sovereign wealth fund. Okay, more importantly, this affirmed that Marcos administration committed to see the fund up and running by the end of the year and effectively paves the way for the operationalization of a well-structured, robust, and effective sovereign wealth fund that will advance the Philippine long-term growth. Okay, yan po mga suki, no? Ayan. Continue po natin ito mga suki, no?
But I mean, it goes from Trump 48, Biden 44 to Biden 49, Trump 39. I mean, it's a
ballgame. It's not even a majority of the countries.
No, but that's all. Yeah, no, I know 6% sounded small, but then when I look at what happens in each state, Biden's winning by double digits in every state.
It's the 49 is from people who switch from Trump to Biden, and also people Trump voters who go to third party.
But what I was going to say about that is, okay, people are very bad, I think, sometimes at imagining how a changing circumstance will change how they feel. You'll see one number that I think was quite abysmal that I don't take very seriously is where.
Okay, isingit ko lang kasi mahaba-haba yun. Ito ay boycott, divestment, and sanction BDS movement follow. Ayan po mga suki ng BDS. Okay, hashtag BDS welcome a lawsuit at the International Criminal Court, ICC, seeking arrest warrant for Israeli leaders for war crimes and the genocide Palestinian in Gaza. Okay, we're calling for maximizing international pressure on the ICC to fulfill its duty to urgently stop Gaza genocide. So yan mga latest po ng balita, no? Okay, ICC prosecute apartheid-style war criminals. Okay, tatlo ito mga suki, no? Okay. Prime Minister, War Minister, and President ng Israeli government, no? Ayan. So yan po ang mga latest balita po nakalap natin dito sa Consolidated News natin, no? Okay, continue lang. Okay, usapan dito po sa Amerika. Ayan.
People say they would never do this or never do that. There's several of our presidents have been people who have had polls that said more than the majority would never support them. But the fact that even just imagining it, there are 6% of people who switch tells you that like the impact of what happens with Donald Trump is convicted could have like a massive shift in polls.
It is the biggest source of optimism
Yeah.
in this poll that if Donald Trump is convicted, but it also speaks to all of, like we say it a million times, but like all of us who pay such close attention to politics and are like news junkies, like most voters are just normies. They don't pay that close attention to politics, and so you know what? Because we're all like, how could they see that Donald Trump did this and said this, and how could they still vote for him? And like, they're not paying that close attention. They forget pretty easily. And you know what? They really care about the economy, but there are also people who, if they see a candidate for president get convicted of a crime, they're gonna be like, oh no, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't want to vote for that person. I'm pretty unhappy with Joe Biden. I think he's a little too old. But this guy's a criminal. Like it does make sense that like whenever you're confused about the electorate, just think like, what are normal people who don't pay close attention to politics thinking right now?
I will say I had that thought, and then I gave myself another anxiety thought, which is okay. There's a huge concern among young people that Joe Biden is too old, and that is especially pronounced among people who are disaffected and don't pay close attention.
Mm-hmm.
Over the next year, if they do start paying closer attention, if the coverage starts shifting to a head-to-head race between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, is Joe Biden on the campaign for the next 11 months and 29 days? Is that going to leave people reassured around his age, or is that going to bring more attention, especially given the way it's edited and shared on social media, more fodder for people's deep concern?
That's up to him in the campaign.
Yeah.
The other sign of optimism is look, like the voters that are giving Trump the lead in this poll.
Okay, singit natin balita ito. Sandali lang. Okay, 5 U.S. service member killed after military aircraft crash during a training operation. Okay, Pentagon says. Basahin po natin ang detalye ng balita, no? 5 U.S. service members were killed when a military aircraft crashed Friday night while taking part in a training operation in the Eastern Mediterranean. The U.S. European Command confirmed on Sunday the helicopter crash occurred during a routine air refueling mission as part of military training. The statement said, the command adding that it would not be releasing the name of the victims for 24 hours so that the next skin notification could be conducted. Okay, US EUCOM. Okay, is responsible for US military operation. Ulitin ko, no? US EUCOM is responsible for the US military operation across Europe, a portion of Asia and the Middle East, the Arctic, and the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, we mourn the tragic loss of the 5 U.S. service members during a training accident in the Mediterranean, Sea late Friday evening. Defense Secretary Bigman Lloyd Austin, okay, in a statement adding that the Pentagon was investigating the nature of crash. So, yan po ang balita. Ituloy po natin itong usapan nila, no? Okay, sige. Ayan.
Are voters that have typically supported Democrats and just supported Biden, in fact, by large margins, right? Young voters, black voters, Hispanic voters. So in theory, these are easier voters to win back for Joe Biden, right? Like the idea that Donald Trump would get 20% of the black vote, something that has not happened with, forget about Donald Trump, any Republican president in the post-Civil Rights Act era, like that would be, and Nate Cohn says this in the analysis, it would be like a earthquake in American politics. And it is probably unlikely, right? Now, Donald Trump can still win without 20%. He got 8% last time. He could get 9, 10, 11 and probably win that way. But it does speak to the idea that once you, like Tommy said, throw $1 billion into a campaign, start a campaign that reminds people what they care about, what Donald Trump is all about, what Democrats are all about, what's at stake for them and their lives, like the numbers could start shifting. That's the other thing. And look, an unnamed generic Democrat led Trump by this poll by 3 in 2019. Now the unnamed generic Democrat leads Trump by 8, right? And that just goes to show that like Trump has become less popular from between 2019 and now. The problem is Biden led Trump by 2 in 2019 in this poll at this time, and now loses by 5. So it is a Biden.
Okay, bagong balita sa panig naman ng mga DDS, mga abogado humingi ng audit sa pera ng bayan, na sa pangangalaga ni House Speaker Martin Romualdez, sina dating Pangulong Attorney Rodrigo Roa Duterte, Attorney Vic Rodriguez, Attorney Harry Roque, at saka Attorney Sal Panelo, no? So, mabigyan kaya ito? Tambaloslos. Okay? Yan po ang mga suki. Okay, mga kaibigan, news sa umaga ito. Romualdez, hinihingian, lang ng accounting po ng grupo ito, no? Inulit ko, pinangunahan po ni Attorney Rodrigo Roa Duterte, Attorney Vic Rodriguez, at Attorney Harry Roque, at Attorney Sal Panelo, no? Okay, mga bigati nito mga suki ay ang mga tao ito. Okay, yan lang. Sige po. Ayan. So, ituloy lang natin, no?
Yeah, and just the other piece of this too is people do not, again, this is not a poll that shows Donald Trump's strengths, it shows his weaknesses. People that are choosing between two options they're extremely unhappy with are not making a firm and solid choice. They're not, this result may mirror a lot of polls in the past, but it's not stable because people's decision is firm. It is stable because people are really unhappy with their choices and they continue to have that feeling.
So our pal David Axelrod caused quite a stir when he said that Joe Biden needs to decide whether it's in his best interest or the country's best interest to keep running. What do you guys think of Axe's Twitter thread there?
I mean, let's just start with the fact that David Axelrod is like a good person who genuinely cares about the future of the country, and he's not doing this to be a dick or because he wants to hurt Joe Biden or any other nefarious reason. He's just worried like everybody else. I think what is so hard about this situation we're all in is nobody wants to make the mistakes of 2016. Nobody wants to, convince themselves that there's no way a Democrat can lose Pennsylvania. Or there's no way that Hillary Clinton can't win to someone as terrible as a human being as Donald Trump. But so we're gonna all get asked the hard questions and kind of speak truthfully about these polls. But you also don't want to contribute to Joe Biden's political problems by helping generate unhelpful narratives about his candidacies, right? So that's the push and pull, the hard place we're all stuck in. But at the end of the day, unless you're a Dean Phillips supporter or you're excited by Marianne Williamson, there's no one else in the Democratic primary for you to vote for. So, and I've seen no evidence that Joe Biden's considering dropping out. So as much as I respect Axelrod's opinion, I don't think that Joe Biden is going to listen to David Axelrod on this question. I don't think he's going to listen to us either. I think there's probably a very small group of friends and family and advisors that Biden may or may not talk to about a question like this. And so, I get where Axe is coming from, but I also get why the White House is frustrated that he tweeted it,
You're totally extremely small group of people, probably a smaller group of people than most others, right? Like Biden has a very close circle, and Joe Biden is going to make this decision, and the only people he's going to listen to are probably Jill Biden and Valerie, his sister, and probably not even Barack Obama, right? Like it's a very small group of people, and so you can control. You focus on the things you can control and not the things you can't control. We cannot control. We're not going to get like a hashtag trending on Twitter to get Joe Biden to step aside. Like, we cannot control this, right? And Axe can't control it. No one can control it. So it's got to be something that he decides. Now, if he did decide at some point to step aside, then you have Kamala Harris, who's still in this poll losing to Trump by just almost the same as Biden, just doing slightly better. And then you've got Gavin Newsom, Josh Shapiro, Gretchen Whitmer, J.B. Pritzker, maybe Raphael Warnock. None of them have been tested on the national stage or even in the polls yet. They'd have to get on the ballot in most primary states this month. Then when are the debates? When and how do they all raise money? How's everyone supposed to choose between them by January, February, March when these primaries are? Now, I'm not saying that's all impossible. It can happen. But the alternative scenario where Joe Biden steps down tomorrow brings a bunch of challenges on its own that I think we should just beware of before everyone's like, oh, that would be the saving grace if he just stepped down. Like there's a lot of challenges to that at this point.
I was really
very late.
One reason Joe Biden is president is because he didn't listen to the people who told him why he couldn't be president
all the time. It goes through his staff's head all the time, and I get it.
And it's right. And never, Ron Klain said this: never underestimate how much people underestimate Joe Biden. I think that's true. I think about that. I think about that in my own reaction to this because, I have this, we all have these, we're all in conversations. Everyone listening to the show is talking to people about their concerns about this. And they're concerned that as much as they are worried about Joe Biden's age and his liabilities, that you don't feel certain that you would want to live in a world tomorrow where Joe Biden said he wasn't running. And all of a sudden, not the fantasy of a perfect alternative, but the reality of a messy and very quick and very contentious process to choose an alternative is suddenly what we are dealing with. I don't know what that's like. Neither do you. Neither does anybody. And so I don't know.
We Democrats, we get along. We don't fight. I'm sure a primary that lasted a month or two, I think it would go well.
I'd say. If Joe Biden did decide to drop out tomorrow, and I'm not saying I'm calling for him or want him to, or anything like that, but if he did, I'm actually fine with the messy primary. I think messy primaries are good. It gets a lot of attention.
Oh, yeah, I am too.
It's totally fine. It wouldn't be simple.
No.
If you jumped in tomorrow, you already wouldn't be on the ballot in Nevada and New Hampshire, and you have to get on the ballots in Alabama, Michigan, and South Carolina by the end of this week, and California and Florida by the end of the month. So it's an incredibly complicated piece of business, and that's why I think people find Dean Phillips so fucking annoying, because even if people were like hungry for some Dean Phillips in their lives, he should have done this a year ago, not a week or two ago.
And also and start playing out. They're all going to want to differentiate themselves from each other on issues. The progressive base activists are still going to be there demanding certain positions. Just as an example, everyone gets in, Joe Biden gets out, and suddenly it's like, who's going to call for a ceasefire, right? And which of you are going to call for who's going to say no more aid to Israel, right? And then you're going to start dividing up that, and like things are going to get, and that's just one issue.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
I know, but I'm saying that's just one issue, right? Like there's a whole bunch of other issues that are contentious, and suddenly we're like off to the. I agree, Tommy, that like I do not fear primaries. I never have, but it's a scenario that's not without challenges.
I think that why didn't somebody else jump in? We talked about this a million times. Why didn't somebody else jump in? I think it's not just because people were afraid of, it's 44 years, this is Tuesday, it is 44 years to the day since Ted Kennedy decided he was going to challenge Jimmy Carter. I think that looms over a lot of this. People are worried that they would jump in, lose, and leave behind a weakened Joe Biden. But underneath that is also, I think, the reality that, even Axelrod, when he was asked about this by the Times, he obviously did an interview after, and he said, give me Joe Biden's record, chop off 10 to 15 years, I'd be really confident, right? Dean Phillips Me too. We all do. Dean Phillips goes on television and says, I'm not running against Joe Biden. I'm running for the future. Okay. What? Why? What's different? Why are you better? Why? And
Yeah, Dean Phillips kind of proves the point of how
It's
the
like-
alternate scenario is not the easiest either.
Yeah, Barack Obama can challenge Hillary Clinton, and he can use a generational frame, but that's as an avatar for deeper cultural, political, ideological differences.
Which he laid out over
Well,
the course
and
of the campaign.
the key one being supportive for the Iraq War.
Of course.
Dean Phillips is out there having voted with Joe Biden 100% of the time, saying I'm better than him. Why?
I just like we are in 1 year in
I
one
think so.
right in 1 year. There's 4 boxes. One of them is Joe Biden wins. One of them is Joe Biden loses. One of them is somebody else wins, and one of them is somebody else loses. If Joe Biden stays in the race, people will look back at this moment and say, "I told you so." If Joe Biden gets out and a Democrat loses, people will look back at this moment and say, "I told you so." I don't care about "I told you so's."
Yeah.
I just think collectively, we have to be honest about our own uncertainty and anxiety that it is legitimate, that it is real, but that nobody has an easy or simple answer.
Yeah. And you know what? And I actually don't worry about the conversation and having this conversation,
No.
and I don't really worry about Access Tweet because we just talked about the voters who are worried about here. They are not paying attention to this. They have no idea we're having this conversation.
It's just the freaks right now. just us freaks.
It really, and like if Joe Biden goes through and he's running and he's the nominee, we're all gonna just do every fucking thing possible to get him elected because Donald Trump in a second term is fucking terrifying.
I had a very smart, very thoughtful reporter today ask me if Barack Obama commenting on the situation in Gaza created political problems for Joe Biden. And I very, very confidently said, no, the situation in Gaza creates political problems for Joe Biden, right? Because that is the core thing.
So
that
ridiculous.
The people,
No, sorry. I know.
It's a DC story from a DC outlet. So it is what it is. But it's like, yes, in terms of the things that actually move people, the voters are actually paying attention to, it's not going to be this debate we're all in.
Yeah. Pod Save America is brought to you by Policy Genius. The holidays not only allow us to spend time with family, but are a reminder of how important our responsibility is to protect them. Life insurance is an easy way to give your family peace of mind. It provides a safety net, so if something were to happen to you, just something, your family can cover expenses while getting back on their feet. Luckily, Policy Genius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts are on hand to help talk you through it. Even if you already have a life insurance policy through work, it may not offer enough protection for your family's needs, and it may not follow you if you leave your job. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Your family deserves peace of mind. A life insurance policy through Policy Genius can give it to them. Head to policygenius.com to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. Pod Save America is brought to you by Field of Greens. The shredded lettuce in a double-double and the fruit filling in a donut are awesome, but they don't count as one of the 5 recommended daily servings of fruits and vegetables. Mayo Clinic says if you want to help prevent heart disease, lower blood pressure, and cholesterol, you should eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. Unlike other brands, each fruit and vegetable in Field of Greens was medically selected by doctors to support your vital organs, like your heart, lungs, kidneys, and immune system. Flu season is here, which means you need to stay healthy. Field of Greens can help you do that. Field of Greens works fast. You'll feel better with more energy, and you'll notice your skin, hair, and nails will look healthier too. What other supplement can promise that you help your nails look better, huh?
I don't know. Not this one does.
Just Field of Greens.
I've been using Field of Greens all the time.
You just
Blend it in with a smoothie in the morning. That's one great way to do it. Or you can mix in with some water, however you want.
it's great. Tastes great. Keeps you healthy.
Gets you all those vitamins and vegetables.
Let us get you started with 15% off your first order. Visit fieldofgreens.com and use promo code Crooked. That's promo code Crooked at fieldofgreens.com. Fieldofgreens.com, promo code Crooked. Pod Save America is brought to you by Stamps.com. Stamps.com has been helping businesses like yours save time and money during the holiday rush for 25 years with easy access to USPS and UPS services and premium rates for all your postage needs. That's why we've used Stamps.com since our early days here at Crooked Media. From the beginning, we've been using Stamps.com here. We love it. With Stamps.com, all you need is a computer and printer. They even send you a free scale, so you'll have everything you need to get started. Now taking care of orders on the go is even easier with Stamps.com mobile app. Give your business the gift of Stamps.com so your mailing and shipping is covered this holiday season. Sign up with promo code Crooked for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to Stamps.com, click the microphone at the top of the page, and enter code Crooked. So the candidate who's somehow leading the race for the presidency took the stand in the New York civil fraud trial that could cost him his business empire. Donald Trump's 4-hour testimony included multiple rants. He was yelling at Letitia James, the Attorney General, He's yelling at the judge. The judge at one point asked Trump's lawyer to control his client. At one point told Trump this isn't a political rally. And then, of course, Trump couldn't help but talk to the cameras as he left the courtroom. Let's listen.
I think it went very well. I think you were there. You listened. You were scared.
Okay na, tama na po mga suki. Tapos na po ang balita. Overtime na tayo mga suki. So ito na po, marinig nyo mga kababayan. No?
Awesome! 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 Awesome!
Okay, tapos na po ang balita natin, no? Okay, so umagang ito, dito po sa programa, okay, tuwing umaga, pati gabi po mga suki, no? Dito po sa ADLSNTV News, okay, the heart of Filipinos, global citizen, global communities for all. Ayan po ba, kuwan natin, no? Okay, sa programa Halo-Halo Special Opinion Balita at iba pa, kasama po sa Buso Publiko Tinig ng Mamamayan, pati na rin sumbungan ng mamamayan, mga suki, mga kababayan, no? So, hanap buhay sa Lunes, okay, tuloy-tuloy tayo maghanap buhay hanggang weekend. Ayan. So, magpaalam tayo, okay, pinagbigyan po natin itong exclusive Barack Obama talks, Gaza, Israel, and the 2024 election po sa Amerika. Ayan, exclusive. Ayan. Sa mga, okay, kakonect natin doon, no? So, tapos lang balita. Wala tayong masamang tinapay. Lagi natin sinasabi po, balita lang. Okay. Bahala ng taong bayan ng publiko. Okay, makikinig po sa ating mga balita, no? Ayan. Wala man sa pilitan dito sa news natin to. Sila na po bahala. Okay, maniwala, hindi maniwala. Basta pinapalabas lang natin ang balita, no? Ayan. Okay, paalam ako. This has been Abs Damahan lamang po, mga kababayan, no? So, walang tunog ewan ko bakit walang tunog. Ayan, ito na lang po ang kapalit ng tunog, no? Okay.
Layla, sa'yo ba itong bag pink na ito? Sa'yo?
Okay. So,
Sa'yo ito?
kung hindi nyo marinig po sa Facebook, marinig nyo po sa
Sa'yo itong bag na pink?
YouTube channel,
Akala ko
no?
kay Jared.
Okay, ADLSNTV News Online din. Ayan. Pag magkadiferensya ang Facebook, meron kayo sa backup po ng YouTube. Hanapin lang, ADLSNTV News Online, no? Okay. Makikita nyo yan.